He's a fourth-generation Singaporean who'll be battling against one of Singapore's most well-liked PAP candidates, Mr. Tharman, in the upcoming general election. He is the founder and Secretary General of the political party Red Dot United. He's Ravi Philemon. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thanks for joining us. So I'll get started into it. Why do you join politics?
Well, I think it was an accident. I came back from the US in the year 2008 after being away from Singapore for a few years, and I felt like I came back to a totally different Singapore. It just seemed too very much more crowded than when I first left Singapore. It was during the great financial crisis in the 2008-2009 period. And a lot of people were losing their homes, and I wrote a simple article as to how people can avoid being homeless. It was a very simple, straight article, no government bashing or anything like that. Basically, how you need to be careful of the kind of mortgage and the bank loans that you take, but nobody wanted to publish that article because at that point in time, the official narrative was there are no homeless people in Singapore. While cleaning up my desktop, I saw this article again, saying, hey, it's a very well-written article. Why don't I see if someone would publish it? So I sent it to the Online Citizen. They published it. And that's how I got sucked into politics, One thing led to another. Very soon, people started recognizing my name. I started writing more often for the Online Citizen, and because I was already in the social services sector, right?
Yes.
So people saw me as an activist with a blog. So some called me a blogivist.
So how did you transition from being a blogivist into a political candidate? Like, tell me, what was the thought behind joining NSP and then SPP and then PSP and then RDU now?
It was, like I said, it was all an accident, right? Because when the 2011 election came along, my name was fairly well known in the social political circles, and so some prominent and well-known opposition leaders asked me if I would join their party to contest the 2011 election. I said no because I was at a different station in my life. My children were much younger. My son and my daughters were still in school, and I was earning a certain income, and I would have to resign from my job to contest in that election. But I also wanted to find out what the election process will be like. I've not involved myself in an election proper, right? So I volunteered with the campaign of Jeanette Chong Aroldos, and so that's how I became a member of NSP. SPP because both Mr. and Mrs. Chams are my friend, from the time that I was with the Online Citizen. And so it was a very natural move to go with Jeanette and to go into SPP.
So why choose this path? Why do you think that standing as a candidate is really your calling? Because it's definitely tough.
It was not easy. I'll tell you, the 2015, Mr. Cham asked me if I would contest the 2015 election. And my first reaction was I was not ready. And then Mr. Cham asked me a pointed question. So what's your reason this time, right? And which made me search myself. And I realized that, yes, unlike the 2011 election, I was at a different place in my life. My daughter had graduated and was already working. My son was waiting for his national service call-up. And I thought perhaps I can do some national service and offer myself as a candidate, right?
So now that we're talking about, things falling into place and then going with the win, can you tell me the rationale behind going with the win, leaving PSP and then setting RDU up? Under what circumstances did you leave PSP?
Before PSP was formed, we were already thinking of forming another political party because we saw the space there, right? We saw that there was a place to have not personality-driven politics, but principled, policy-driven politics, which is based on values. Me and my friends were already planning some of these things, consulting lawyers, writing our constitution, and so on and so forth. But when Dr. Tan Ching Bock formed the PSB, we put our plans in the back burner and went to support him because we thought that it was a worthy initiative. We wanted to lend our support to him and to PSB and all that. About 1 year later, we felt that our time there was up. When I left PSP, I wasn't thinking of starting a political party. But one thing leads to another, and I believe in going with the flow.
So now that we're talking about Red Dot and all the values that you guys have, drafted, gotten ready, and is now putting up, one of the values that you guys stand for is freedom, right? Because you guys said democracy without freedom is like bubble tea without pearls. Such a choice code. I want to know a bit more about the Freedom of Information Act. You guys stand for it. What does it mean? Paint a picture for us.
Okay. I think right now the government gives us information in a piecemeal fashion and in a way that they want to present it to Singaporeans and to other agencies who may want them. So we believe that the information should be available in a more raw format and available to all citizens who ask for this information. And it will be useful to build an active citizenry. For example, right, recently the SDP got into problems, right, because they presented some manpower details in from a certain year to another certain year. When we have a Freedom of Information Act, an organization like SDP can go into the raw details and look at all the figures that are available from a certain point in time to another set point in time and present a more holistic article. And I mean, nobody sets out to present falsehoods, right? Unless you're a malicious actor.
So what if I were to play, the devil's advocate here? Because since we're going to POFMA, we'll talk about it a little bit. Is that in some cases, there are a lot of people who might not intend maliciously, but have put out information that's false. And then that creates, fear, concerns, constraints, trouble, inconvenience. So don't you think that there should be some leverage that the government has so that in this information age, people can avoid such, non-malicious...
I do believe that the government, how the government has used POFMA so far is as a right of reply, right? It allows the government to take down certain posts in an expedited manner if they feel that it will impinge on racial harmony or religious goodwill and so on and so forth, right? So those are the good things which are in the POFMA. But what we are against is the labeling, right? So because only a court of law should be able to determine what is false and what is not false. And this can always be done in a more expedited manner.
So am I right to say that if we don't call it false, but we ask people to take things down because we think it's inaccurate, would you be more comfortable with the framing?
Of course.
I see. Okay, I think that is interesting. Switching gears, I want to talk about another policy, Singaporean First hiring policy, that has been front and center in quite a few articles when they talk about your manifesto. Right. So how will you balance between having the right foreign talent that ensures that the economy is competitive, right, while ensuring that you are keeping Singaporeans first?
Well, I lived as a foreigner in an alien country, right? So I'm not xenophobic, but I believe that Singapore has to remain a global city. But I believe a global city in which the privilege of citizenship is better accentuated. And I think the way that you can do that is to make sure that it's fairer to Singaporeans. Like, for example, a few weeks ago, the government came out and said that Singapore has to remain an open society where it invites foreign talents. And again, another few days later, they said that it's going to be very tough after the post-pandemic era, and Singaporeans have to contend with taking up more traineeships and internships. So can you see the difference there, in the sense that while foreigners are coming in, foreign talents are coming in and taking up more permanent jobs, Singaporeans have to contend with less permanent and more temporary internships and traineeships, right? I mean, taking a real example, right? So one of my friends was laid off in the COVID-19 period. He was in the oil and gas industries. He was a senior manager earning a certain amount of salary, and his children are still young, and he lost his job. He couldn't find a job despite putting out hundreds of applications. He finally settled to be a security guard, and now he's working almost like 24 hours to at least, and he's earning a quarter of what he earned before. And can you imagine the kind of stress that it will place on someone who's in his 40s or 50s, and the kind of strain that it will place on relationships, I think Singaporeans deserve a better deal, so that's where
But what if the problem isn't exactly that, we're just kind of aggregating all of Singaporeans and then aggregating all of, foreigners and then placing them in these jobs, because these jobs are differentiated, right? You might need certain foreigners to fill certain jobs.
Of course.
And in your case,
I totally agree. Which, I mean, in that sense, it goes back to our education system, right? Why we Singaporeans top the international assessment on education in many fields, like PISA, for example, right? We top the PISA examination. Why, despite all this, we are not able to find or build the right talent for the jobs which we have now? Does it mean that the government is not doesn't have foresight to look into the future? Or perhaps they have foresight, but they had industries that from the past which they had to support? So there are many questions which arise from this question alone, right? I mean, the world is changing. Post-pandemic, the world was already being disrupted by technology, and after COVID-19, this will only accelerate. The kind of jobs that we have now, we will have them no longer, right? The kind of a lot of businesses will close, right? So what are we doing about it? How is our economy planned towards it? How is our education system planned towards it? So there are many questions which has to be asked. So I agree that of course we should be open to foreign talent, but we should be more careful in how we sieve them and how we receive them.
So you think the Singaporean hiring policy expands not just at the hiring stage, but also at the training stage and the education stage to ensure that the entire manpower is going to, the entire labor force includes Singaporeans who are well suited for jobs. So everybody has, a stable and comfortable living.
I mean, people usually say that Singapore doesn't have any resources, right? But that's not entirely true. Singapore has two major resources. One is its geography, right? And we have always thrived, not just from 1959, but we have always thrived through the centuries because we are strategically located geography-wise. And the other resource, very important resource that we have, is human resources. And I believe more can be done and invested into the human resource of Singapore. Give Singaporean workers more powers back.
I see. Okay, thank you. And we're also running short of time. So one last question. It's going to get real personal.
Okay.
It's that you've been in the political circuit for some time. And you've also seen many of your other peers kind of rise up the ranks in their own respective political parties.
Right.
Some would say that you might not be getting the same recognition. How do you feel about that?
I'm okay with it. I'm very secure in myself, and position doesn't mean much to me. Not that it's not important, but you don't need position to do what your convictions tell you to do. I will continue to do what I do because I love Singapore, and I think that the country ought to be going a certain way. So I feel good for my friends. I wish them well. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Okay, and with that, thank you for joining us at
All right.
Inconvenient Questions, Ravi.
Thank you, Valerie.